So, what on earth was going on with India's economy in 2025? It's like you're reading two completely different stories at the same time. On one hand, you've got this painful contraction. We're talking layoffs, startups closing down. But on the other, there's this powerful, almost silent boom happening in the country's industrial core. Now, that might sound like a contradiction, but it's not. It's something else entirely, a great recalibration. Let's dig in and figure out what that really means. We've got to start with the people, because behind all the big numbers and fancy economic terms, there's a real human story. This quote here from a Blue Smart driver just hits you. His company suspended operations practically overnight. It really captures that raw, personal shock that so many felt during the tech sector's turmoil. It grounds this whole big story in a very real, very painful reality. And that reality, well, it got a nickname: a year of pink slips. Seriously, the headlines in 2025 were just dominated by job cuts, especially in that high-flying, venture capital-fueled startup world. This was the part of the story everyone saw, and for thousands of people, it was absolutely devastating. Okay, get ready for this number: 9,500. That's how many jobs were lost in India's startup scene in 2025 alone. I mean, that is a staggering figure. It points to a massive, massive shakeup. But to really get what this number means, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And if you look at the timeline, you'll see that 2025 didn't just come out of nowhere, right? After a huge, painful correction in 2023 with 17,000 layoffs, things seemed to cool off a bit. But that pressure, it never really went away. So this wasn't some sudden, shocking crash. It felt more like a slow, painful bleed that just kept going. And look, this is so much more than just a number on a chart. We're talking about real people's lives getting turned upside down, an abrupt loss of income. That's terrifying. Crushing levels of stress and anxiety. You had super talented professionals forced to take lower paying jobs just to make ends meet. And for the companies, this created this huge trust issue with their employees. And that's something that's way harder to fix than your quarterly earnings report. But here's where the story takes a massive turn, a real plot twist. Because if you were only reading the tech news, you'd think the entire Indian economy was in a nosedive. But that just wasn't the whole picture, not even close. While one, very loud, part of the economy was shrinking, another, much quieter part, was having this incredible awakening. So while all that doom and gloom was dominating the tech news, a totally different story was unfolding in India's industrial heartland. We're talking a powerful boom in manufacturing and automotive and logistics. And this wasn't just things getting back to normal. It was a fundamental shift, powered by technology that was finally moving out of the experimental phase and onto the factory floor. Need some proof? Just look at this. Toyota Kirloskar Motor, a 17% jump in sales. 17%. That's not a small uptick. That's a massive signal of super strong consumer demand and a really resilient economy. People were out there buying cars, big ticket items, and that right there is a huge vote of confidence. So you've got to ask, what's the secret sauce here? What's fueling this boom? Well, it's not just about building more stuff. The real story is the tech that's being put to work inside the factories and supply chains. See, 2025 was the year Indian industries stopped just talking about AI and automation and actually started executing on it at scale. It was a huge move from just trying things out to getting real-world performance. Check this out: 2.7x. That is how much spending on AI in big companies has just exploded since 2024. I mean, that's not just growth, that is a rocket launch. AI stopped being this futuristic buzzword and became a core part of the industrial toolkit. It became a must-have if you wanted to compete. And this chart, it really paints the picture, doesn't it? We're talking over 61% of Indian companies are already deep into AI pilots, and another 23% are actively planning to invest. You add that up, and it's a huge majority of businesses moving AI from the maybe someday list to the we need this right now list. This isn't some future trend. It's happening as we speak. And let's be super clear here. This isn't just about some fancy software running on a server somewhere. No, this is physical. We're talking robots on the factory floor, AI managing massive supply chains, advanced automation completely reshaping warehouses. They're all becoming smarter, faster, more efficient. India's famous engineering muscle was finally getting supercharged with cutting-edge tech. Okay, so let's pause for a second. We have these two totally opposite stories, right? Layoffs in tech, but a massive boom in industry. How do you even make sense of that? Well, it all comes down to something called the Great Startup Reckoning, and this is where all the different puzzle pieces finally start to click into place. Now, this is maybe the single most important thing to get. The startup slump? It wasn't the economy getting weaker. Actually, it was the exact opposite. It was the sign of a market that was finally growing up. It was like a necessary cleansing, a house cleaning, getting rid of all those business models that were built on pure hype and easy money, and making room for companies with real, sustainable plans. And this right here just lays it all out in black and white. You can see who was getting hit hard. A lot of those flashy, consumer-facing companies with really shaky fundamentals. Think some kinds of e-commerce, certain ed tech platforms, and especially real money gaming. But on the flip side, the B2B sectors, business-to-business software, deep tech, enterprise AI, they weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The market was rewarding real value over empty hype. And really, it all boils down to this one super simple but game-changing shift in thinking. For years and years, the mantra in the startup world was grow, 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 even if you were just burning through piles of cash. Well, that era is officially over. Investors are now asking a much tougher, much smarter question. That's great, but how are you actually going to make money? Profitability is the new king, period. So this new economy is definitely stronger, more resilient. But with great power comes, well, new problems. Think of them as growing pains. As India's digital and industrial systems become more and more critical to the global economy, they also become much bigger targets. And that means you need a more sophisticated rulebook to manage it all. And that first growing pain is a big one, cybersecurity. And this number, honestly, it's just staggering. 2011. That's how many cyber attacks Indian organizations were facing every single week. Not a month, a week per organization. This isn't just a threat anymore. It's a full-on digital siege. And it's not just the number of attacks, it's how they're doing it. The bad guys are getting way smarter. Check this out. The use of info-stealer malware, that's software designed specifically to steal your data, it shot up by 58%. These attackers aren't just trying to cause chaos anymore, they're trying to steal your most valuable digital assets. I mean, forget those old, obvious scam emails. The game has totally changed. We're talking about AI helping craft perfect, convincing scams, incredibly sophisticated campaigns to extort companies for their data, and even something called synthetic identity fraud, where criminals literally invent new, fake people. The threat level is completely different now. So with all this happening, this growing complexity, you get the second major growing pain. The rulebook is getting a rewrite. As the market gets more mature and the risks get bigger, regulators like the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, are stepping up their game. They're not trying to slow things down, they're trying to build a stronger, safer, more transparent foundation for all this growth. And we're not just talking about tiny tweaks here. SEBI made some serious moves in 2025. They pushed for everything to be digital to cut down on fraud. They made the rules much stricter on what companies have to tell their investors, and they gave a lot more power to independent directors. The message from the top was crystal clear. If you're gonna play in the big leagues, you have to be way more responsible. All right, so let's bring it all home. What's the final takeaway? This great recalibration in 2025 is basically clearing out the old, shaky parts of the economy to build something way stronger, way more sustainable. The weak foundations are being torn down. But we can't forget, that process has been incredibly painful for thousands of people. So the big looming question is this. Can this new, stronger economic structure be built fast enough to create opportunities for all those people who are left behind by the old one? The answer to that is going to define not just India's next economic chapter, but the lives of millions.